Now, my name is Desmond Clarke. I was named by my mother and father. May they find favor amongst the great ancestors. I was born in St. Anne, a village. It was like a little town called Alexandra. And it's 9 miles west of where Bob Marley was born, in the parish of St. Anne, the parish with the most radical and forthright people. I honor them. I was brought up in a little village called Madras. It's about 7 miles northwest of Brownstown, the market town of Brownstown. And I spent my first 14 years in that little village, which has influenced most of my life in terms of my self-confidence, my vision, and the people that I grew up with. My parents unfortunately separated. And so my mother came to England and married a guy from our village in 1965. In 1967, I joined my mother and by now stepfather in England. As I was still of school age, I attended a local comprehensive school, leaving at 16 without ever sitting an exam. On leaving school, however, I did a number of menial low-paid work because without any qualification, it was very difficult to access any reasonable paid employment. And I was dissatisfied. To say I was dissatisfied with my teen years was an understatement because I had left my village, my localized environment, my friends, and at 14, it was difficult to integrate into a hostile community that exhibit overt racism. I remember seeing a sign which says "Room to let. Black dogs or Irish need not apply." So just before my 18th birthday, I decided that I would join the British Army because my grandfather was a soldier, my uncle was a soldier, and I admired him greatly. But if racism was vile on the streets, in the army, it was 10 times worse because it was 24/7s. And I was now living amongst the real redneck racists. So after 3 years, I decided that I've had enough of army life. Now, on leaving the army, I did a number of other jobs, and in 1991, I had a very tragic experience in losing my mother and experiencing a family breakdown. But I became very fatalistic in my outlook. But at the back of my mind, I could hear the voice of my mother imploring me to go to college. So in her honor, I engaged in a few basic academic studies. Pleased to say I have continued my journey of self-discovery and intellectual development ever since. I have, in the process, achieved a BA honors degree and a master's degree. But I've come to realize that the more I know, the less I know. And after completing my master's, I was torn between continuing with academic studies and completing a doctorate. But I was also torn in terms of writing a book. In the end, the book won. And so I've come to doing my first foray into historical research and writing. I initially wanted to write an autobiography about the life and time of a village boy, but eventually I felt that there was a bigger picture and a bigger story that needed to be told, especially when it came to issues surrounding the history of the African people. Through my primary experience growing up in Jamaica and my later adolescence experience in England, I was conscious of many of the negative stereotypes that was portrayed about Black people. And sadly, many of those negative stereotypes have been internalized by many Black people themselves. During my academic studies, I was conscious that many of these negative stereotypes were based on lies, and that those who wrote our stories were mainly Caucasians. That led me to try and challenge some of these Caucasians' lies by revisiting the cradle of civilization, i.e. Kemet, which then enabled me to challenge these Greeks, Romans, and Western Eurasian narratives of the African people. Hence my book, which I can proudly display. It's called Stolen Inheritance, published in 2019 by Austin Macaulay. And it explores how our philosophy, artifacts, resources, and people were stolen from Africa. It also shows what have not been stolen, have been concealed or destroyed, and continues to be stolen to this day. Often I've heard Caucasians say that Africa is the white man's burden. But the truth of the matter is, Eurasia and North America is the African burden. It's important then that we as Africans emancipate ourselves in terms of unlearning the false narratives that has been told to us and learn the true greatness of our people. We as African people must reclaim our stories so we can empower the next generation. Now, in writing my first book, I've encountered a number of challenges, but one of the greatest challenges that I've encountered was in overcoming my self-doubt, especially regarding my knowledge and my understanding of some of the political, social, and economic issues. In my research for the truth, I have often had to deal with some very difficult discoveries. But I was reminded that as an African historian, we must never be afraid to say what we have found or what we have discovered. Often I was faced with the collusion and betrayal of African leaders of their people And it reminded me that some of them have sold out their own people for their 30 pieces of gold. So in disclosing these and coming to terms with these discoveries, I have needed to be courageous as to what I have found and to question the behavior of some of our people in perpetuating our oppression. And as a Pan-Africanist, it is my hope for the future that this book will stimulate, it will inspire, and entertain readers regardless of your views of Africa and its peoples. I also hope that one day in the near future, there will be a united Africa. I mean, I hear people talk about United States of Africa. I am not interested in the nation state because the nation state was imposed on Africans by the agreement of the great six powers in 1884, including America, in carving up Africa for themselves, and the atrocity that has been committed since then. In 1963, when there was an opportunity to break away and re-establish African unity, it became fragmented through to the covert action of Western powers into what was called the Organization of African Union. That was merely accepting the agreement that was made in 1884, so that today there's about 13 countries that deposit their reserve in French banks. There is still zones of control by Western powers, and they continue to play nations against nations. So as a Pan-African, for me, the nation state has not delivered, and it never will, because it was never meant to be. And my final hope is that once Africa is united, there will be a right of return for all African people and their descendant that was stolen. And a right of return would be about one government in terms of the African United Africa. In terms of Kwame Nkrumah, who says one government, one army, and one people. Because in the truest sense, out of many, we are one. I hope I have given you enough and raised enough of your interest to go out there, educate yourself about our greatness, and never be defeated by negative stereotypes, because we are greater than we think we are. The knowledge that we need to empower ourselves begins here. And I've put together evidence, references that could be a starting for your journey, because when I started my journey, I had no future. I was fatalistic and heading towards disaster. And through enlightenment and relearning, I've been able to recapture my confidence and belief in the future and my people. You can get this book directly from the publisher, from Austin Macaulay, at www.austinmacauley, that's one word, .com/US. And of course, it's available on many of the books outlet, including Amazon. You can contact me directly, GMTDES, one word, at yahoo.co.uk. And to close my presentation, I wish you all peace, joy, and love. Thank you.